Hi, everyone, and welcome to Lurking for Legends, a live video cast where we talk with people from all walks of the publishing industry. I'm Christy Stratus, historical suspense and historical fantasy author, and my awesome co-hosts are, let's see if I can get this right, our epic fantasy author Richard H. Stevens and sci-fi author David M. Kelly. So Lurking for Legends is an interactive broadcast, and we encourage viewers to chime in with any questions you may have for our guests about their books, which we're going to be reading from tonight, or comment on anything you hear in the show. This is a live read. This is one of our funnest shows of the month. We all look forward to it, especially. So tonight, our guests are, oh, by the way, this is the topic is not what it usually is. Usually we choose one genre, or once we did pirates in general. This time it was host's choice. So we have a lot of different kinds of things going on here, which is really cool. Great variety. So tonight we have Hildie McQueen, and she is a Scottish historical romance author, and she'll be reading from her book, The Lion. That's just the first in a series. We also have Warren A. Shepherd, and he's a sci-fi author who will be reading from Sex, Bugs, and UFOs. Pretty intriguing right there. And finally, we actually have our own co-host, Richard H. Stevens. As you know, he's an epic fantasy author, and he's going to be reading to us from Windwalker. Very exciting. So let's just start out with our guests introducing themselves. Richard, you want to introduce yourself?
Windwalker.
Woo, yeah. So let's start with you, Hildie. Tell us just a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Hildie McQueen, and I write medieval, historical, mostly Scottish romance. And I've been writing for quite a while. I'm a USA Today bestselling author. I love anything pink and chihuahuas.
I'm pink.
Yeah, and you kind of look like a chihuahua.
I love you already, Hildie.
I mean, chihuahuas are cute.
Hildie, you can become a co-host with us now.
Yeah. I was born and raised in Mexico and right on the border there in San Diego, and now live in Georgia, in the south of the United States.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being with us. And Hildie is prolific. So if you like what you hear from her today, she's got a lot of books for you to enjoy. And so next we have Warren. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Warren.
My name is Warren Shepherd. I like to class myself as a sci-fi author who is saving the galaxy one word at a time.
I love that.
I live in Toronto, but I was born in England, and I was ripped from the motherland at the age of 7. And I think that has influenced my views on life and my yearning to be somewhere else. So maybe I'm always looking to the stars. Sex, Bugs, and UFOs is my first book, although it's taken a hell of a long time to get there. And hopefully it won't be the last. I'm already working on a sequel, but it's that yearning that I hope will appeal to people, because it's anyone who's ever sort of looked at the stars and wished they were somewhere else. So I'm happy to be here and happy to share it with you.
Fantastic. And is this your debut work? I believe it is.
It is, yes.
Great.
Yes.
Awesome. Very exciting.
It's interesting that you were ripped from the motherland and Dave was thrown from it.
Yes, apparently he was kicked out.
Oh, no. Richard, I know everyone already knows you, but just in case anybody happens to tune in who is not familiar with you, do you want to tell a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I never thought about doing it. Yeah, I'm an epic fantasy author. I have 13 books to my name. Book 14, I was going to announce it today on social media, but I figured, nope, I'm going to wait till tonight and drop it right here. It actually will release on September 16th, which is next Friday.
Windwalker. We've been waiting.
It has taken forever to write this book. The editing process has just been crazy. So I started it in NaNoWriMo in November last year, and NaNoWriMo sucked the life right out of me. And the book just lagged, and the editing's lagged. And I keep doing events, and I don't have time. I finally got it all done, and we now have release date, and that'll be going up on Amazon tomorrow. I didn't want to do anything until we actually had the Lurking for Legends show today. So
exciting. Awesome. We get to end. That is actually, congratulations, Hilary Stokes says.
Oh.
So we're actually going to start with Windwalker, very excitingly. So we'll be starting there, right?
Yes. So I will set the book up if you guys are all ready to get into it. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, good.
Yep.
All set.
So this is from the book that's going to be releasing next Friday, and this chapter is called Too Easy, and this is actually the entire chapter. A lot of my chapters are quick. They're not quite as short as James Patterson's, but some of them are fairly quick. So in the scene, I'm the narrator, and I'm also riding the Red Wizard. I get one line at the very end as a speaker. Dave is Jayax, and we typecast him like we always do. He's an escaped prisoner whose story of life is spent in and out of trouble. And Warren will be playing Maris. And Maris is a burly horse groom who has been forced to help out the group that attempted to assassinate the king. And he's a horse groom at the palace. So this all takes place in the Elven Kingdom of South March, and we're in the city of Orlithia in Boreg Palace. Hildie is playing Ryona. She's a palace house guard who is complicit in freeing her husband, Maris, from the dungeons, because he was arrested when he was caught with the others. And Christy is playing Cassava. And I love the character Cassava. She is known in my world as the Assassin Queen. She's a ruthless killer whose strong accent is spoken with a purr. And I'm not sure how Christy's going to pull that off, so we'll task her with that. But
Meow.
So the scene is a group has just escaped the dungeons beneath Boreg Palace after being caught trying to assassinate the king of the elves, and they have entered the Inquisitor's Itch. And the Inquisitor's Itch is an obelisk that is hidden within the royal gardens. It's never supposed to be accessed because of what it represents, but the Red Wizard has now taken it over and has made it his own. It's now his wizard's lair. It's in the heart of the palace grounds, and the group are searching for Prince Breen, who was also captured with them, but he was not held in the dungeons with them. He was taken somewhere else, and they believe he was taken by the Red Wizard. So we can just start, just as I get myself prepared here. I'm only the narrator, so I don't have any speaking terms, but I got to get into my elven little spot here. And yes, I can really pull these off.
All in my ears.
So whenever you're ready, take it away.
The wizard!
Jayak's shout of alarm made Maris jump with fright. He spun around to face the doorway where his brother desperately tried to prevent Scale from falling to the floor. At first, Maris feared someone had attacked and killed the Highcliff magic user, but noticed with relief that Scale's frightened eyes were searching their surroundings as his head lolled in Jayax's grasp.
Help me!
Jayax pleaded. Maris ran back and grabbed hold of one of Scale's arms. Together, they hoisted him back to his feet.
What happened?
Jayax shook his head.
I've no idea. I started after you, but since that he
Jayax nodded at Scale, supported between them.
wasn't following. When I looked back, he was reeling in the doorway like he'd taken an arrow in the back.
Maris craned his neck to check Scale for an offending object, but nothing seemed out of order.
I know.
Jayax looked around the entryway. His face spooked.
There's no sign of an injury. Come on. We best not lose the others.
Maris fell into step on Scale's far side, examining the smooth stone all around them as they went, the low ceiling embedded with glowing crystals. With a last glance at the thorny vines concealing the entrance, he swallowed his misgivings and increased his pace to keep up with Jayax, lest he lose his grip on the barely conscious magic user. The strangely lit tunnel went much deeper than the Inquisitor's Itch outside's dimensions suggested. Maris sighed.
Wizards.
It was so quiet within the obelisk's interior that Maris thought he could hear his heart hammering in his chest above his ragged breathing and the scrape of Scale's leather boots dragging between them. Searching for signs of anything other than their bland stone confines, he whispered,
I've got a bad feeling about this.
You and me both.
Jayax mumbled, concern contorting his sweaty features.
There.
Maris caught sight of the feral woman with tri-spiked daggers, the sheen of her dark skin refracting the pinpricks of light that emanated from the ceiling. She was crouched low over Ryona, who was in turn kneeling before the opening of what appeared to be a large room beyond, their silhouettes framed in a reddish glow. Cassava's purr thundered in the silence of the tunnel, though it was obvious she was attempting to keep her voice low.
What happened?
She rose up on her toes to see past them, before settling back into her warrior's crouch behind Ryona.
Don't know.
Jack said.
One moment he was walking behind me, and the next...
He pointed his free-handed Scale. Cassava jumped back to where they stood and cupped Scale's face and long fingers, staring into his bleary eyes. She nodded.
Bewitched.
Be what?
Maris asked, looking to Jayax for help. Jayax shrugged.
Bewitched.
Caspar said again, as if reiterating the word would make them understand. Rayona looked over her shoulder and rolled her eyes at Jayax and Maris.
He's under some kind of spell.
Spell?
Jayax asked.
Whose? I never saw anyone.
Maris listened, but the startled look of comprehension on his wife's face confirmed what he was thinking. Raiden. A numbing cold flushed him. The reminder that the wizard had remained behind almost made him lose his grip on Scale. He adjusted his hold and scanned the stone, hemming them in.
Didn't you say this was his area now?
Rayona's haunted look confirmed it.
That's not good.
Jayax chimed in.
No, it's not.
Rayona turned to the doorway and crouched beside Cassava, who was hugging the wall and peering into the reddish glow.
Put him down.
Jayax said.
You'll be fine until we know what we're up against.
Maris wasn't so sure, but as Jayax lowered his half of the wizard into a sitting position, Maris had no choice but to do likewise. Taking a moment to gently lower Scale further, laying him on the ground so that the wizard wouldn't come to harm if he toppled over, he scrambled after Jayax. Beyond Rayona and Cassava, a large room opened before them, its walls and floor cluttered with shelves and tables that were littered with parchment, tomes, and candles of varying heights. The faint glow of their individual flames cast in an eerie reddish hue. It took Maris a moment to find the cause of the peculiar taint. Set on a tall candle stand, a shard of crystal pulsed ever so gently, basking the chamber with a reddish aura.
What's that?
Maris whispered, to no one in particular.
I don't know, but it's oddly familiar to the one I saw in the cell across from here where they were holding the wizard.
Jayax nodded back toward where Scale lay motionless in the tunnel. The room appeared too large to be part of the Inquisitor's itch, but as far as Maris could tell, they hadn't left the obelisk.
There.
Rayona pointed to the shadows in the corner of the chamber closest to the glowing crystal.
Is that him?
Maris leaned on those in front of him to get a better look and swallowed. Bound and gagged on the ground, a male elf in a brown surcoat lay unmoving against the wall.
It certainly looks like him.
Before anyone could breathe again, Cassava darted into the chamber. She paused behind each table as she came across to look around, and then moved to crouch against the next one. With one last dash, she slipped in beside the sprawled elf and lowered her face to his. Just as quickly, her head shot up, and she motioned for the others to join her. Rayona held her dagger at the ready, as if expecting someone lying in wait for them, but as Maris stepped into the room, he realized they were alone. He thought about going back to get Scale, but decided against it. They would have to pass right by him on their way back out. The large room smelled of loam and a sickly sweet odor Maris couldn't identify. Most of the inscriptions on the tomes and partially unrolled scrolls he passed were meaningless, their letters more like pictures. Though he had a rudimentary grasp of the written language, there was no way he could read anything he saw in the Red Wizard's lair. The sound of skin slapping skin drew his attention to where Cassava supported Brain's neck with one arm. Shaking him in her grasp, she slapped his face again.
Brain, can you hear me? Brain, wake up. It's me, your cinnamon girl.
Maris blinked at that.
Cinnamon girl?
Though, now that she mentioned it, the exotic woman did exude a cinnamon-like aroma. Jayax crouched between Brain and the wall, lending a hand to lift him into a sitting position. He patted the prince down, presumably searching for signs of injury, but when he pulled his hand clear of the folds of Brain's garb, his fingers were unstained. He caught Cassava's inquisitive stare.
What's wrong with him?
Bewitched.
She said in her strong accent and jutted her chin toward the tunnel.
Just like the other one.
Rayona gave Maris a quick hug as he joined her in the corner of the chamber. Not happy about being inside the mystical stone structure whose inner dimensions defied what his brain was telling him was impossible, he said,
We should get out of here. We can worry about what's afflicting them when we're away from the palace.
Cassava and Jayax didn't have to be told twice. Together they got into position and hoisted Brain's listless body to a standing position, the rogue elf appearing to struggle more under the prince's weight than Cassava. A subtle movement on the far side of the glowing crystal made Maris's breath catch in his throat. Before he had a chance to whip his head around to see what it was, the red glow was extinguished beneath an overturned brass bowl. Hundreds of unlit candles flared to life, exposing thin metal bars of a large holding cell that extended from the back wall. and out toward the chamber's entrance, a holding cell that Maris and his companions stood within. Clad in red robes, the diabolical blue eyes of Orlus Red Wizard gleamed with delight as he materialized out of seemingly thin air. He raised a hand toward the chamber's entrance to where a wide, iron-barred door hung open. Waggling long, pale-skinned fingers, the door swung around to impact the floor-to-ceiling cage they stood in with a bang and resounding click, trapping them inside. Events that transpired so quickly that not even the cat-like Cassava had time to react. One moment they were alone in a bizarrely furnished chamber on the verge of rescuing Breen, and in the next they found themselves caught within a well-sprung trap. Cassava sprang at the door, her impact rattling the bars, but the lock held fast. Unperturbed by Cassava's aggression, Ryden Danya, the great nephew of the infamous sorceress Danya, met the horrified stares. With the most satisfied of grins, cleaving his clean-shaven face, he said, "Too easy." I love the ending there.
Very good.
Very nice.
Fantastic. Sounds like an exciting book, Richard.
Well, thank you. So I'm going to go off screen right now while we introduce the next book. And take your time there, Hildie. You can set us all up, and I will see you guys in a minute.
Okay.
Now I have to rearrange this.
Oh, well, this should I talk about my book? Is that what I do?
couldn't find a Tam O'Shanter, I'm afraid, but I do have my muscle chest on under my shirt.
Oh,
Let's see it.
This thing fell down.
Very excited.
Uh,
Oh no! Richard's been exposed.
this is all live, right?
This is all
This is
live.
coming to you very live.
I thought this was a family show.
Oh,
Well, let's talk about the lion.
I don't know. I'm watching that.
oh my goodness.
Look away.
I think I'm scarred for life.
Oh my goodness. Go ahead, Hildie. Tell us what the lion is about a little bit and where we're picking up, especially.
Okay, so the lion is the first book in the Clan Ross of the Hebrides. I have my first series was Clan Ross, which took place in northeastern Scotland, just north of Inverness. And this story takes place on the islands off the coast of Skye. And they're known as the Hebrides. Well, this book starts off with this young laird taking over for his deceased dad. And everybody, the clanspeople were in fear of him and hated him. He made very many enemies. So he is trying to reclaim the clan by having, being kind and trying to work with the people, trying to be fair, and at the same time trying to figure out how to keep others at bay. So while all this is happening, we're going to pick up in a portion of chapter 7, and this is the hero and heroine's first interaction. And she, in the middle of this, while he is becoming laird and trying to take over and take care of things and learning how to take on the role, his mother decided it's a good time for him to get married. So she invited over her dear friend from another island. And she's come over with her 2 daughters who he will marry the youngest, whose name is Beatrice. So the heroine, though, however, her name is not.
I will in a minute.
It's Isabel.
I'm just trying to load it up here.
So, I try not to laugh. And so.
Okay, this is your best one yet.
So Derek Ross is overwhelmed by duties. On top of that, his mother decides it's a perfect time for matchmaking. This is when the hero and heroine first meet. The characters, I will be the narrator. The laird, his name is Derek Ross, and he is the new laird. He's gruff and impatient because he's not in the mood for this. Lady Ross, his mother, is bossy, but in a nice way. And she will be played by Richard.
Of course.
I'm sorry, I didn't say that. David is playing Derek Ross, the new laird. Isabel McDonald, who is the heroine, She's soft-spoken, and she will
Sorry,
be
Lois, you shouldn't have
played
seen
by
all of that.
and Catriona. Oh, I'm sorry, Beatrice McDonald, the heroine's sister, and also Catriona Rice, the sister-in-law, will be played by Warren.
Sorry, I don't have a wig and
So
Richard has taken it to the
Right.
next level.
the scene starts off with Lady Ross speaking.
Oh my goodness. All right. You look beautiful, Richard.
Well, thank you. Are we ready to go?
Uh-huh.
Ye are
No,
not
you're not.
at last meal, and here I find ye with that strumpet. I am embarrassed at your behavior since our guest arrived.
It became hard to keep his temper in check, but he managed to not bark out his reply.
I am very busy, mother. I do not have time to sit about and sip mead with your friends.
Despite himself, his eyes widened when Lady Ross neared.
I know your duties, Derek. I am aware of the limited amount of time. However, they came with the expectation that ye would marry Beatrice, or at least find if ye are compatible. Ye have yet to spend even a solitary moment with the lass.
It is ye that demand I marry. I do not see what the urgency is.
Your brothers!
What?
He let out an exasperated breath.
Mother, speak clearly, please. I have things to get back to.
Her face became like stone.
Ye must
can
marry
say
so
that.
that your brothers can as well. Ye being the eldest must set the precedence. Ye are aware of that, are ye not? All of ye are well past marrying age.
Ewan is married.
Thank God for it.
His mother interrupted.
But ye are the laird.
Marriage and lairdship went hand in hand. The people did not trust and respect the man who was not married. It was the way of things, and he well knew it. However, despite it all, he had to at least like the person with whom he had to spend the rest of his life with.
I will try, mother. I apologize.
He looked at the spread of parchments, maps, and other unopened correspondence.
I cannot promise much time.
I promised the lass that ye would go for a walk with her after last meal.
Derek pushed back from the table and stood. His mother's elbow. Taking his mother's elbow, he motioned with the other hand.
Shall we, mother?
Upon entering, Derek noticed Beatrice and Isabel sat on the end, where he normally did. Beatrice to his right and Isabel to his left. The right side, of course, meant to be where the prominent person sat.
I apologize for my lateness.
Derek said whilst looking around the table.
I became lost in my work.
When he looked at Beatrice, the lass seemed to shrink back. It was hard to keep from looking up at the ceiling with annoyance. It was obvious the wee lass found him either intimidating or unlikable. Probably both.
How fare ye today, Miss Beatrice?
He asked her.
well.
She gave her sister a pointed look, so he turned to Isabel.
Have you found enough to keep you busy, Miss Isabel?
Eric asked, expecting to get the same reply as her sister. Isabel nodded and her face brightened.
Today I went out to sketch. I too lost track of time, sketching scenery. Although my reason cannot possibly compare to yours, I understand how it happens.
What did you sketch?
Well, I did the view of the road that I presume goes toward the village. It is quite lovely, with the forest on the one side and the sea on the other.
Indeed.
He had to admit to enjoying conversations with Isabel MacDonald. Her keen intellect was as interesting as her fiery retorts when she was angry with him.
Have you spent time with any of me brothers?
He asked, genuinely curious. Perhaps she'd piqued Stuart's interest. His brother needed to find another woman, as it was obvious his betrothal to the Euston lad had been permanently ended. Isabel considered his reply for a moment and then looked to Ewan.
Your brother Ewan, his wife Catriona, and I went for a walk by the seashore.
We did. It was enjoyable.
Catriona said. I messed that one up. Derek wondered how Ewan had managed time away for something as leisurely as a walk. As far as he knew, the only time he'd broken from the barrage of visitors was when he'd stormed outside angry after Karen had contradicted him in front of a villager. During his walk outside, he'd not seen anyone walking along the seashore. Then again, he'd been concentrating on playing with Albie, who always managed to alleviate his bad moods.
Perhaps we can go for a walk after this meal? A bit of fresh air before you return to work.
Isabel's request shocked him. He was fairly sure she did not like him. That she asked him to spend time was interesting. Then he realized she probably did it to keep him from her sister. At the other end of the table, his mother bored holes into him. Obviously, she'd heard the request.
I would like that very much,
he replied. Isabel gave him an incredulous look, and he chuckled. The lass was up to something. It could be that once again she would attempt to talk him out of marrying her sister.
What about ye, Miss Beatrice? Would you like to join us?
Beatrice shook her head.
I find that I do not feel well. I hope to have not caught whatever Mother is ailing with.
Mother has a headache,
Isabel said with a droll look.
You should come for a walk. The fresh air will solve your problems as well.
The young lass paled and slid a look in his direction from under her lashes.
Stuart,
she exclaimed much too loudly.
I am an avid reader. Could you help me find something in your library?
His brother turned from a conversation he was having with Ella and began listing the different selections. Beatrice seemed not at all familiar with anything he mentioned.
Are you an avid reader as well, Laird?
Isabel asked him.
I am, although admittedly I've not read anything in a long time. I kept very busy helping Father with his ledgers and such.
It actually surprised him to note that he missed quiet evenings spent reading. When the meal ended, he waited for Isabel to gather a wrap. Then, along with Albie, they walked out the side door of the home to the same place he'd gone earlier that day. The dog instantly raced away.
He will return with a stick,
Eric said.
Usually one that is much too large for him.
Isabel smiled, her gaze following the dog's meandering. Without preamble, she went to the situation at hand.
My sister has no wish to marry ye, Laird. I must ask that you consider not courting Beatrice. She's a delicate person who would be better suited for a quiet life with someone less...
Of an ogre?
I am sorry for that,
she said, her cheeks coloring.
It was rude of me.
Derek shrugged.
I deserved it.
When Albie emerged from the woods, dragging a branch, Isabel broke into laughter, the sound of it flowing through the air. She pointed at Albie, who wagged his tail vigorously, unable to stop her mirth.
He is so funny,
she exclaimed between bouts of laughter.
So very adorable.
That she liked the dog more than him bothered Derek. He grabbed a huge branch from Albie, broke up a smaller piece and threw it, and the dog raced off after it.
Laird?
Isabel began, her gaze lifting to him.
Perhaps ye can inform your mother that ye will not marry Beatrice. Surely ye do not wish to force marriage upon an unwilling woman.
Has she not told your mother?
Hitching her chin as if in challenge, once again she met his gaze.
You know very well that woman will have very little to say in who we marry. Besides, she is not your type at all.
It was too tempting not to tease her a bit.
What, pray tell, is my type, Miss Isabel?
They walked where they stepped down, and he held his hand up for her to take. Isabel took his hand, not seeming to take much notice. However, the feel of her soft skin enfolded between his fingers definitely affected him. As soon as she stepped onto flatter ground, he released her hand and clasped his behind his back.
I would say,
Elizabeth began,
that ye would need a strong woman who is not intimidated by ye. Someone who your brothers and your mother would accept, of course.
Of course,
he said, so she continued.
Ye said you like to read, so your future wife cannot be a simpleton. but one of keen intelligence. Oh, and one last thing.
She gave him a disapproving look.
She must be willing to turn a blind eye to your dalliances.
In an amicable silence, they continued to walk for a bit. Although it meant he would be up much later working, Derek found that he was not in a hurry to return inside.
What about ye, Miss MacDonald? I know ye do not wish to speak while ye are not here for me to court. However, I wonder, what type of man would ye marry?
For a moment, it was as if she was transported away. She turned from him, her gaze moving from the treetops to the ground. When she spoke, he had to listen carefully, as it was almost like a whisper.
Above all, he must be kind and forgiving.
It was on the tip of his tongue to ask what she needed forgiveness for, but intuitively, he knew she'd not speak of it.
Although often considered a virtue, kindness can sometimes be a fault.
She didn't reply, and he ran a few feet away to throw a stick for Albie. When he returned to her, Isabel watched Albie.
Why did you name him Albie?
I was being melodramatic and named him Abyss since he's so dark. However, with a personality like his, it was much too dark a name.
Isabel nodded.
I agree.
We should head back.
Derek said, realizing they'd walked quite a distance and it would be dark by the time they returned. He wondered at the oversight of not having a chaperone along. Despite he and Elizabeth not being at all interested in one another, it could be harmful for her if someone were to say they'd seen them alone after dark. She turned in a circle, arms out.
The perfect day is turning into a delightful night. I do love summer evenings.
It's best we get back before it becomes evening.
He replied, looking toward the keep. With Albie trotting happily in front of them, they began the trek back.
Will you speak to my mother?
Isabel asked quietly.
Please consider it.
Derek nodded.
Very well. I'm not sure I have time for a wife. Mother insists on it, however. I'm not sure.
Ye should marry for love.
The word, so much like his mother, struck a chord.
I do not have time for such things, Miss MacDonald.
Ye should just call me Isabel. Ye keep switching between Miss Isabel and Miss MacDonald. For goodness sakes, we have known each other since we were children.
Very well. Then ye can call me Dara.
I cannot do that.
She snapped.
Ye're a laird.
They reached the slight incline, and he turned to assist her up. Just as he did, unfamiliar with the terrain, Isabel tripped and tumbled sideways. She cried out in pain.
I will help ye up. Do not move.
Derek leaned forward, and she pushed his hands away.
I am fine. Just need to catch me breath.
She inspected her bleeding elbow.
I feel silly.
Sitting on the ground, inspecting her elbow, dark waves of hair coming loose from the fall. She was a lovely picture.
Isabel, let me help ye up.
Derek took her arms and pulled her forward. In that moment, Isabel winced, realizing something hurt, and she pushed forward, perhaps to hop on one leg. All Derek knew was that he lost his balance and landed on his back. And despite releasing Isabel being the smart thing to do, he had not. So she landed on top of him in a tangle of skirts and curses.
Perfect ending.
Nicely done.
Yay, thank you.
David, you dog you.
I know. Terrible. Terrible.
When you read your book out loud, you feel like editing, don't you?
Everyone does.
Exactly. You can edit your book 1,000 times.
Now that was wonderful. That was wonderful. And I'm actually reading that book currently, so it was cool to get a tiny sneak peek. So that was great.
I love the accents. You guys did great.
Mm-hmm.
And who's doing the sound effects? Who runs the sound effects? Is that David?
That's our science fiction guy, yeah.
He knows what he's doing with the sound
Very
effects.
nice.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about that.
No, that was good. And it's awesome because it always throws our guest off I'm not used to it.
The scream was wonderful.
That was beautiful.
You did good.
It was
Now,
better than I could do. It's perfect.
so,
Okay, so we want to jump into Warren A. Shepard's excerpt from Sex, Bugs, and UFOs.
Richard, are you changing? Because that's not how I pictured Kiki.
Oh, well,
No, that's fine. It adds
Well-
to. I mean, Dave, if that's your type.
I'm trying to
then-
become the object of Dave's desire, so
It's looking good.
oh,
Great.
hang on. I don't know how you guys deal with these things. Holy cow.
Well, I don't think they're removable for a start.
Well, they're kinda- yeah. Anyway,
Are we all set?
yeah, you go ahead, Warren. You can
Okay.
set the scene
So
for
to
us.
set up, it's set in present day London. So this is at the beginning of the story for it's the introduction of our main character, Dave Marcy. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time looking at David with the. But
You do.
he's a man in his early 30s, and he's reflecting on a traumatic childhood event that set him on the path of his extraterrestrial investigation. So I will be the narrator. David will play our main character, Marcy. Christy, you'll play Marcy's mom. And Hildie, I'm sorry, you've only got one line as Suki, Marcy's bar manager, but I know you will just kill it.
I will kill it.
And of course, Richard, I mean, is there any question that Richard plays the object of Marcy's desire? Who would blame him? Look at that.
oh yeah.
I mind you, I feel a bit sick.
I can't wait to see you on Saturday, Dave.
Oh, God. Is that going to be live on YouTube as well?
TikTok.
Okay,
Oh man.
here we go. Morrissey was 7 when he first suspected that the world didn't fit him quite right. 2 sizes too big or 2 sizes too small, he couldn't be sure. All he knew was that planet Earth pinched him in all the wrong places. Discovering this uncomfortable truth wasn't like when you learn there is no Santa Claus, or that in the beginning man created God and not the other way around. No, the truth had hit him very much like the tight, smelly fist of a schoolyard bully called Norman Riley. The fight, if you could call it that, didn't last long. A 3-against-1 attack rarely does. Why do thugs always travel in threes? But Morrissey managed to get off one good shot that seemed to make his point. After that, he spent most of the time blocking Norman's punches with his nose, while his henchman pinned Morrissey's arms. Later that night, he sat at the dining room table, silently pushing peas around his plate, while his mum sat patiently opposite. She was too good at mothering to force him to talk before he was ready. But he knew she couldn't go on pretending he didn't have an entire tissue box bunged up his nose to stop the bleeding.
Do you want to talk about it?
She said softly. Morrissey shrugged the question away without meeting her gaze. Finally, he answered.
Norman Riley is a wanker.
His mum suppressed a grin.
Davy, you can't call him that.
Well, he is. He's a bully and a wanker.
But he's never picked on you before.
A twitch of worry flickered across her face.
He hasn't, has he?
Being the new kid in town made Morrissey easy prey in Norman's book. Having only recently moved from London from a small town south of Sheffield, up until now he'd been able to avoid the brunt of Norman's torments. There were plenty of other victims further down the food chain.
No, I can usually stay out of his way.
But not today.
Not today.
Today, Norman had come at him with a full-on purpose. Kids can be horrible to one another, and Norman excelled at horrible.
He said things.
His mom tried to diffuse the situation with one of her tender smiles.
People say things all the time, Davy. Doesn't mean we have to start fights over them.
Morrissey glared.
Does it look like I started the fight?
No, but
It was about you.
The words came rushing out unbidden.
He said things about you.
She stiffened.
what sort of things?
Morrissey replayed the scene over in his head. complete with Norman's malicious glee at having spread the poison.
He said you and his mum got into an argument at the co-op. Didn't you just say that we can't go around starting fights?
His mum looked away sheepishly.
You said the fight was about whether or not UFOs are real. How is that even worth fighting about? You said you told her you'd seen one, that you'd even seen an alien.
His mum's fascination with extraterrestrial phenomena was no secret to him. They'd often make a game of it as they looked up at the stars. Sometimes when they were out in public, they would play a game of Spot the Alien, playfully pointing out likely candidates who could be extraterrestrials amongst the passers-by, making up fantastic planets complete with complex races and civilizations. But that was a game, their game. Norman had turned it into something vile and twisted.
You said you were a crackpot, a freak, a mental case.
Morrissey turned his eyes up from his plate, fighting the well of tears.
Is it true? Did you see one? An alien?
His words felt sour and accusatory on the way out. His mum blanched. Morrissey could tell she was struggling for just the right answer.
That's silly, love. Why would I say that?
Why would Norman say that? He's not smart enough to make something like that up. Is it true?
She took too long to answer.
I'm so sorry, love. I really am. It's something I don't like to talk about.
But you could talk to Norman's mother.
Well, we weren't exactly talking.
She clenched a napkin in her hand.
We were standing in the checkout line, flicking through the tabloids, as you do. They had a story about a UFO sighting, and she's just so stubborn.
That's not really the point, is it? So it's true then what Norman said.
His mum plucked absently at the thumb-sized knot of scar tissue that rippled her neck, something she often did in moments of anxiety.
Would it be so bad if it was? I mean, a lot of people see unidentified objects in the sky. It doesn't mean they're mental cases, as Norman put it. It's not a big deal, is it?
Normally it wouldn't be, but there'd been something in Norman's tone and his outpouring of vitriol which had burned through Morrissey's gut.
It made it sound like it was a big deal. He said that you and his mum got into a right slanging match and that you shoved her into a magazine rack.
Yes, I might have overreacted. A little. Okay, a lot. But she was being completely ridiculous. She had no idea what she was talking about, babbling on about things she couldn't possibly understand.
Mom, stop it.
She took a deep breath.
You're right, Davy. It was a long time ago, another life ago. What's important is us, that we're okay. Are we okay?
Morrissey didn't have an answer. Nothing seemed okay at the moment.
Norman said that's why I have no dad, that my father couldn't stand being with a UFO crackpot.
He pushed his dinner plate away and looked deeply into his mother's faltering eyes.
Is that why Dad left us?
She reached for Morrissey's hand, but he pulled it away, unsure if she was worthy of his affection. She was older than most mums in Morrissey's circle of friends, but never before had she looked so worn down.
Your dad, your father, he and I didn't see eye to eye on many things. And yes, that was one of them, to say the least. I really am sorry, love. I thought this would stay in the past, where it couldn't hurt us, where it couldn't hurt you. I certainly never thought it would come out like this. Does that make sense?
Mom, I'm 7. How can any of this make sense to a 7-year-old?
Morrissey felt her reach for him again, pulling him close, holding him tightly. This time, he didn't put up a fight. He had none left in him.
This isn't something a little boy needs to deal with.
She said.
Not a little boy.
She rocked him gently and spoke in tones only a mother can. Morrissey didn't let go until sleep took him. The next day, she was gone. The only thing she left behind was a silver pinky ring, wrapped in a note declaring her love for him, with the hope that one day he would understand why she had to leave. He never did. Morrissey shivered. For years, he'd felt to blame for his mum's abandonment, that if he just kept quiet about Norman's taunts, They would have lived a full life together, facing whatever challenges came their way together. But a child's magical thinking can concoct all manner of justifications for trauma. In Morrissey's case, none of them are all that appealing. He'd even imagined that she'd been abducted by the same UFO that had haunted her past. It was easier than accepting that she just couldn't be his mum anymore. The resulting chasm of doubt and yearning had chased him into adolescence and beyond, charting his life toward the inevitable path of UFO investigation. He'd never been quite sure whether he'd join the Ministry of Defense's UFO hotline to give credence to his mother's claims or debunk them. But in all his years with the department, he'd never found one shred of extraterrestrial proof that would salve his tortured conscience. Long after his departure from the MOD, he'd carried his search into his private life, holding weekly informal support meetings for victims of UFO phenomena in his pub, the Crooked Crow, in an attempt to ease their troubled psyches. It was a haven for them and for him. He told the story about his mom's disappearance many times in the group. Sometimes he told it to break the ice, to coax some of the newcomers out of their reticence. But sometimes he just needed the catharsis, each time hoping he would find new meaning in the cold memory. There had been no such relief. This week's session had been nothing out of the ordinary. A few new attendees along with the handful of regulars. But it had come to an abrupt end at old Mrs. Beasley's insistence on showing the group where the aliens had inserted her tracker. Morrissey tried to assure her that such a viewing was best held privately, and anyone who wished to see it would contact her directly. So far, there were no takers, and the group disbanded, each quietly going their own way. As he stood at the bar, mired in his thoughts, he was suddenly struck by a woman sitting alone in a two-seater booth. She had ordered a Bacardi and Coke with the Coke on the side, and sipped absently at the liquor while leaving the mix untouched. She watched the local patrons as they drank and talked, taking an almost sociological interest in their behavior. Morrissey had never had occasion to use the word smitten in a sentence before, but felt sure that this was indeed the right context. The woman was out of the box, no assembly required gorgeous, though technically her face shouldn't have worked. In a serendipitous mix of Asian and Slavic features, her chocolate almond eyes were just a little too widely spaced and set above impossibly high cheekbones. Her aquiline nose charged boldly down the sharp angles of her face toward a set of lips that stretched rather cheekily across a delicate jawline. But somehow she managed to fudge the numbers to achieve the sublime. Excuse me.
From the sublime to the ridiculous.
Exactly. His bar manager, Suki, sidled up to him, catching him off guard. Is she on mute? I think she's on mute.
Yeah, she's on mute.
Muted, Hildie?
You could always go and talk to her, you know. You do own the place.
Very funny, Suki. Didn't you know that the expression to be out of one's league was minted specifically for occasions like this? And she is well and truly out of my...
And then it happened. The mystery woman sealed his fate with a simple smile. It was all the encouragement he needed. He knew that any romantic overture could spiral off in any one of a million horrible directions. Even with her wonky math, she was truly greater than the sum of his parts. Not that his parts were without their own appeal. With a playfully sly grin and cheeky gleam in his eye, he was by no means a stomach-turner. But he wasn't necessarily a head-turner either. Yet there's an incredible sense of freedom you got from not being God's gift to women. Morrissey shifted his charisma into first gear and casually made his way to a table. He decided to start with something from the classics.
Hello.
It was always a good icebreaker, followed up with a splash of honesty.
You know, I've been rehearsing what I'd say to you if I ever managed to work up the courage.
An eternity passed before she spoke.
Really? And what have you come up with?
Her voice was honey. Morrissey shook his head nonchalantly.
A few platitudes, some faint praise, but most of it is absolute gibberish. I'm usually completely intimidated by beautiful women.
Self-deprecation was a tricky maneuver. One, if not performed artfully, could result in complete emasculation. Luckily enough, she seemed to be playing along.
Then I must not be trying hard enough, since you are, in fact, talking to me.
Don't get me wrong, you're a passably handsome woman, to be sure.
He said, taking refuge in the cocoon of sarcasm.
Is this what you call flirting?
It's what I call flirting. Others may beg to differ. In all honesty, I'm secretly hoping that you're already attached. Actually, that's not a secret.
She eyed him quizzically.
Why would you go to all the trouble of approaching a strange woman only to hope she's unavailable?
It all comes down to pressure and the art of avoiding it. That's one of the things you're either going to love about me or absolutely detest. Rejection I can handle. Rebuilding my self-esteem is sort of a hobby of mine. But if a beautiful woman accepts your overture, well, that's when the performance anxiety really kicks in.
You are a peculiar fellow, aren't you?
It's best you know up front.
And this technique, it works with women?
Morrissey leaned in closer.
You tell me.
The woman smiled, as if it couldn't get any better.
You do have a certain charm about you.
She extended her hand, her touch warm and electric.
My name is Kiki. Kiki Pashmina.
I'm Dave, and I'm off. I mean, Dave Morrissey.
All right then, Dave.
She said as she tossed back the carafe of Coke in one gulp. Oh, jeez.
Do you think you can handle the pressure of buying me another drink?
He gave her a sly wink.
If you play your cards right, I could probably get us a staff discount.
You are a smooth talker.
Morrissey nodded somewhat proudly. Sometimes he surprised even himself. That's rather ominous music.
What did you expect?
Well, you're going home with him.
Oh my god. That's glasses.
That's very nice.
I love that.
I'm like silent laughing over here. I can't even.
Margaret was wondering if we have time for questions tonight. I'm not sure. We didn't ask you to whether you guys have a time limit or not tonight. So.
Oh, we don't. I don't have a. I thought you went an hour, but I'm free.
We tend to go 45 minutes, but it's not set in stone. If we go beyond that, I'm okay with it. I don't know about anyone else.
I'm good.
Thank you, Anita. Yeah, a lot of fun. So go ahead, Margaret. If you have any questions, you're certainly welcome to ask them. And while we're waiting for that, why don't we just get our guest to let us know what's coming up with Hildie McQueen's realm. I had this all written out and it was supposed to be smooth, but Hildie McQueen's kingdom. I'm trying to be smart here, but it's not working.
You want to know what's happening with my realm?
Yeah, what's coming
With
next?
Hildie
Hildie?
McQueen's
What's
kingdom.
next? What's next for Hildie McQueen?
Well, the last book in the Clan Ross of the Hebrides released late last month. It's called The Eagle, and it's the 6th book in the series. And right now, I'm currently doing rewrites on the first book of the follow-up series, which is called The Guards of Clan Ross. And so I'm really excited about that. It kicks off with a blonde hunk of a man called Eric, and he is
I'm here.
he's Norse.
Norse.
Was he removing? Anyway, and so that book will be releasing end of October. So I'm really excited about keeping this world going and the Hebrides. So I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen after that, but for now, I'm just right there. And 3 more books will be coming out in that same area.
Nice.
Awesome.
Nice.
So Margaret's asked us a question here. She goes, how long do you all rehearse for this?
Does it look like there was rehearsal?
No.
Zero.
Believe it or not.
There is absolutely no rehearsal for this at all.
A lot of times I will read what my excerpts are, and then I will think ahead of time what props I want to get. Because I've been doing so many events, and I've been in the throes of this edits of Windwalker, I've had no time to do anything. And had it not been a live read, I would have asked Dave and Christy if I could have canceled tonight, because it's just been so hectic. But I didn't want to miss the live read, so I powered through everything. And about 10 after 6, I sat down and finally read the excerpts that you two sent and realized, oh my goodness, I got to get all this stuff. And then my wife was awesome. She got behind me, and she is the one who was dealing with me between scenes.
She got behind you and pushed.
Yeah.
Pushed you
I
out of
think
the closet, in fact.
I think the zero rehearsal helps, because as a newcomer to this process, you guys not knowing what the other people are going to do kind of adds that element of
I think so.
excitement,
That's true.
spontaneity.
And we never know what Richard's going to do. I mean,
I am
Richard
quite
beat me-
impressed.
Way beat me out. I got to catch up.
Well, you guys do your accents so awesome. Like, it comes natural to Dave. I'm not sure how it comes to Christy, but she does it well. And even Warren, I was listening to you. Your accent was great there too. So
Thanks.
you guys
I was
actually
very impressed with the Scottish accents.
Yes, I'm not very good with stuff.
I have a question for Hildie, actually, if that's okay.
Oh, okay.
Have you been to Scotland? Have you been to the locations
I
that you
have.
write about? So because we went a few years ago, my wife and I went to all over. We went to the Isle of Skye. We went to Inverness. So yeah, I find that very interesting. If you can write from that sort of first-hand experience, that's great.
Right. Well, my maiden name is McTair, and I was doing some research. And at the time, I was actually not writing Scottish romance, but I went to Inverness and Edinburgh and traipsed all over the Highlands and stayed for a few days in Plockton, this little tiny fishing village, and then got a driver. He took us over to Skye, and I just fell in love.
So did you have the idea for the books before that, or did that inspire you, or was it going for research?
No, it was. I just went because I wanted to see Scotland. I fell in love with it, and I started researching Scotland, and now I want to go back. So I will be back probably next year. It's my plan, and this time I will go with more of a writing from that land and country, and getting more of a perspective.
Great.
I think Margaret's asking if you met Jamie.
I wanted to find them.
Jamie Fraser. I think that's what she was getting at there. I think she's trying to say without trying.
Yeah, I know. I do not want to go back in time. I don't think. I mean, from what happened to them, I don't want to. I don't want to go through that.
I made the mistake actually of reading my time period is not the same as yours, Hildie's. Mine is Victorian, but I made the mistake of reading this very in-depth article about why you should be glad to be alive today in terms of medical treatment. And it was one of the most disgusting things.
It is.
And I knew a certain amount, but then there was this other stuff that was just sickening. Oh my God.
It is. Yeah. You don't want to go back to medieval times, especially. Victorian was bad enough, but imagine medieval times and get sick.
Seriously.
Yes.
Dead by the age of 30.
It was about how long people lived. Yes.
Crazy.
But
Margaret is saying, sorry, go ahead.
I said, I love the research. I was answering her question. I love the research and imagining life there without with more bats and less stinkiness. But I love it.
I always wondered how people procreated back then, because there would have been it's so stinky.
Exactly.
I do not want to
romance.
Yeah. I don't
my
want to
people
be
go swimming a lot. They go swimming in the loch.
That's smart.
Okay.
That's smart. There was in the Victorian era, they used to wear perfume bottles because of that. During a certain I don't remember exactly when that started, but there was you could wear it as a necklace, kind of. That helped a little, I think, but not the same as our hygiene today.
No, it's very different.
How about you, Warren? What's your favorite part of your own genre?
For me, it is. I hate the old thing about write what you know, because then you'd be writing in such a small little circle. So for me, it's that your imagination can go anywhere. You can take it anywhere, and yeah, you can sort of write stories parallel to what's going on today, or make up your own sort of political arenas. It's the freedom to do whatever you want. You set up the rules of your own world, and you try and stick to those rules, and just run with it. And hopefully, it's that you will bring people into your world with that. That's what I love about it. And they create like fantastic worlds out of nothing. And yet with mine, I'm rooting it in reality by bringing somebody from what we all see as familiar and throwing him into the unknown. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Excuse me. What about you? Actually, let's just do all of us, David, because you write sci-fi too.
For me, it's really the kind of the idea of imagining what things are going to be like in the future, and sort of projecting kind of like trends that we see now, and extrapolating them into the future and where that might take us. But so that's kind of one part of it. But the other side of it is also kind of exploring the idea of what people might do when they kind of like end up in these, often very extreme sort of circumstances and extreme environments, and how they might respond and react, and how they might, function, and how society itself might kind of cope with these things, So that's really the kind of like thing about science fiction that gets me. I love that. And of course, I love rocket ships, spaceships, flying through space, other planets, aliens. Who doesn't? Yeah.
who doesn't?
Richard.
It's all about the character with me. You write any kind of genre, it's generally you have a male or a female. When you write fantasy, you can have whatever kind of creature you want to have, and then you can actually make them sentient, which so when I started the series I'm writing now, which Windwalker's part of, I've never written about a goblin before, and I thought, I'm going to put a goblin in there, and I know what goblins are supposed to be like because I play D&D and read a lot of fantasy, especially in the Forgotten Realms, and I wanted to make my goblin different, and he is very different, and it's just so mind-opening. There's so many different things with these different creatures. At the end of the day, they're still just a male or female creature for the most part, but it just seems like you can do so much more with them because they're different. They have different abilities. They do see the world a different way. They live a lot longer, some of them, and so I think it's the eclectic things that you can do with these amazing fantasy creatures that I find you're kind of limited to doing it with just a man and a woman here on Earth.
Yeah. And for me, I would say it's all the forgotten historical figures, and so it's along the lines of you, Hildie, the research, but it's specifically like forgotten historical figures, forgotten even items, or etiquette, stuff like that. And it's just amazing, like doing deep dives into all the aspects we never hear about the Victorian era, and finding all these people who were notorious in their time for one reason or another, or news items that were like a huge deal and nobody knows about them anymore. Of course, they're just totally gone. And discovering those and being able to bring those to life is like super exciting to me. I get really excited. So this is how I end up going down the rabbit hole for hours at a time. Of course.
I can see that in your social media posts. Some of those posts are really cool. Like when a lot of times I see people's social media posts, and you read a bit of them. That's kind of cool, but you move on. Yours is so neat too, because you actually are learning as you're reading them and seeing how bizarre the human race actually is, and the silly things that we did, and then you try and look forward and think of the silly things that we still do, and it's just a different. This is different. It's the same pile. It's just a little bit different. Yeah. So it's amazing what people actually did back then to survive and get along.
It makes you wonder how 100 years from now, how people will look back on
yeah, exactly.
today and think, can you believe they did that?
Yeah, they'll be watching this show specifically.
Yes, you specifically, I think.
That guy with stuffing stuffed up his nose, yeah.
Hey, we are in one of the oldest professions,
That's true.
Storytellers.
So, sorry, before we leave, we didn't ask Warren about what's going on next with Warren. And
Yeah, well, I am working on the sequel to Sex, Bugs, and UFOs. It's going slowly, slower than I would like. But it's supposed to be a second book in a 3-story arc, and there's potential for spin-offs of certain characters. And once you read the book, you might even figure out who you might like to see in a spin-off. But all I can say about the sequel is there will be space pirates.
nice.
So anyone who likes space pirates.
Oh, where's my patch?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you got to make it metallic or cover it with make it.
Yeah, right.
So so I hope people will look forward to that, and I hope it won't be too long before it's out.
Awesome.
Cool.
Absolutely. I look forward to it. I love listening to and reading your excerpts. So that was great.
Oh, thanks. It was great to be here. It was a lot of fun.
It was fun.
Yeah, you guys,
I know we all look forward to doing this. So
you guys make it painless.
sometimes we make it painful, but in a fun type of way. So.
And you were very kind to me and both of us today.
So what about you, Christy? What's new in the Christy Stratosphere?
The same thing that's new every week. So it's like the same thing, but it's new. I have another episode of Corrupted Magic out. So that is a weekly. Yay! Every single week I publish a new episode of my historical fantasy. It's Victorian era fantasy, really fun stuff. Lots of fantastical things going on. So this is book 2. And it is on both Patreon and Kindle Vella. Eventually it will be paperback, but all of this is coming first. So yeah, every week I release a new one, and boy, do I have a ton of fun writing it. I really, really enjoy it. And I do include some of that forgotten stuff in there. I have forgotten historical characters. I have some forgotten, the most fun Victorian slang you can't imagine. So I have a lot of fun with it. So that is what's new with me this week. How about you,
Awesome.
David?
Well, I'm progressing with my next Hyperion Jones story. I've been adding words to that. I've not done too much the last few days because I took the weekend off and
Nice.
just had some fun. I didn't do a book event, but I'll be doing one next week, as we mentioned earlier, with Richard. So we'll be doing that this coming weekend. And the other thing that I have to say is that today is my anniversary.
Oh, happy anniversary.
Happy
Hillary.
to my wife, Hillary. She's my biggest supporter, my fiercest critic, my best friend, and I'd be lost without her.
Cheers.
So,
cheers.
That's awesome. Cheers to that. Cheers to Hillary. And as far as myself, I think we got a happy anniversary coming in here yet. There we go.
Yeah.
How many did you say how many years it was? that you've been
it's
married?
14 years that we've been married, but we've been together a lot longer than that.
You say 40?
14.
Oh, 14. Oh,
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
so with me,
Feels like 40.
yeah.
Oh, no, I didn't say that.
That's the opposite of what you want to
Yeah,
say.
we better quit while we're ahead, Dave. So for me, my Windwalker is now going to release September 16th, so you guys first to hear it. And I'm doing 2 book events this coming weekend. I'll be doing one while Dave's traveling down to our place. I'll be in Victoria Park. It's a non-violence day in the park. And it was interesting when I was approached by the person running it. I said, well, do you realize what I write? I write fantasy with dragons and swords and stuff like that. And they said, as long as it doesn't get too gory or too graphic, we're okay with it. And I said, yeah, no, that's fine. So I will be there for all Saturday afternoon at Victoria Park in Kitchener. If anyone's knows Southern Ontario, that's where we'll be. Come on down. It's going to be lots of authors there from the local area, so and all different kinds of genres as well. My stepdaughter Lauren, she'll be there. She's got 6 children's books out, and she'll be selling her Lucy and Talk of the Pet series there as well. And then so we'll see Dave on Sunday at Eden Mills, the Writers Festival. I look forward to doing that. So
That's great.
that's about it. Thank goodness this edit's done. It's been the worst edit ever, and I like editing, but it's just taken forever. So, so anyway, thank you to Warren and Hildie for joining us. We really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you all
Show
for having
special.
us.
We love
Thank
reading
you,
your
Margaret.
stories.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thanks.
So for Christy, Dave, and I, until we meet again, take good care.
Good night.